When Emily saw her younger brother Kyle signing the papers for their mother's house, the house she'd grown up in, the house she'd saved from foreclosure with her own savings, she didn't scream. She didn't lunge at him fists first. She simply stood up, stepped onto the porch, lit a cigarette she hadn't touched in 6 years, and whispered to herself, "You think you won? Then you have no idea what I'm capable of." It wasn't just a house. It was all that remained of her mother after the funeral. And now she'd given it to him. The one who hadn't called in years, who never visited, who never helped care for her during those final, brutal months of illness. The one who showed up to the wake in a brand new suit and Tom Ford cologne, as if attending a product launch, not saying goodbye to the woman who'd raised them alone, working double shifts just to keep food on the table. Emily gripped the ashtray until her knuckles turned white. She still remembered the smell of hospital linens, the steady beep of the 4, her mother whispering, "Take care of him, Em. He's just not grown up yet." And she'd tried. For years. She'd lent him money, gotten him jobs, even covered his gambling debts after he lost big in Las Vegas. And now he stood in her living room smirking, as if he'd just won the lottery. "You knew Mom always wanted me to have the house," he said, adjusting his tie. "You're a girl. You've got your own life." She nodded. Silently. Because words were empty. Revenge wasn't about words. It was about action. Emily Wilson never thought of herself as cruel. At 38, she worked as an accountant at a small law firm in Portland, lived in a modest apartment overlooking the park, drove a used Honda, and took one solo trip to the ocean each year. Her life was quiet, almost sterile, not because she didn't want more, but because everything more had always ended in pain. Her parents divorced when she was 12. Her father left for another woman, leaving behind a mountain of credit card debt and a letter asking her to forgive him, if you can. Her mother, Linda, instantly became father, mother, provider, and home. That was the moment Emily first understood. In this world, you can't rely on anyone. Only yourself. Kyle was born when she was 15. At first, she resented him for making her mother even more exhausted, even quieter. But when her mother fell ill, pancreatic cancer, a diagnosis doctors whispered about, Emily realized, now it was her turn. She moved her mother into her own home, quit her higher-paying job to be there, paid for medications, attended every consultation. And Kyle? He sent flowers. Once. On the day of a surgery that never happened, her mother had already refused it. Linda's final year passed in silence. Just the ticking of clocks, the sound of rain outside, and sometimes Emily's voice reading old novels aloud. And in the will, opened a week after the funeral, it turned out the house, valued at $480,000, went to Kyle. Reason: he hasn't found himself yet. He needs it more. Emily didn't cry. She went to the library, found a book on inheritance law, and started reading. The first step was simple. She requested a copy of the will from the notary. There, by lucky coincidence, worked her old high school classmate Sarah, now the notary's assistant and, as it turned out, Kyle's ex-lover. Sarah made no secret of her bitterness. "He tells you everything?" Emily asked, pretending to flip through papers. "He tells no one anything," Sarah replied bitterly. "He just takes what he wants and disappears." That was the first time Emily allowed herself to smile. She learned Kyle had already filed paperwork to sell the house. The buyer, a local developer planning to demolish the old house and build townhomes. The deal was set to close in 3 weeks. Deposit: $50,000. Kyle was planning to leave for Costa Rica. Start a new life, as he'd posted on Instagram. Emily withdrew money from the college fund she'd been saving, not for herself, but for her niece, Kyle's daughter. Yes, he had a daughter. Emma. 6 years old. Lived with her mother in Seattle. Kyle saw her once a year on her birthday, with a gift bought at the airport. Emily found the number of Kyle's ex-wife, Michelle. They spoke for only 10 minutes, but it was enough. "You want to stop him from selling the house?" Michelle asked. "I want him to lose everything he thinks is his." "Then you need to prove Mom wasn't of sound mind when she signed the will." "She was stage 4. She could barely hold a pen. That's not proof, Michelle said. But I've got something better. The next day, Emily went to her mother's house. Kyle had given her one last chance to collect your things. She nodded silently and walked into the bedroom. While he was on the phone with the realtor, she searched the desk drawer in the study. There, tucked behind a folder of electric bills, was her mother's journal. Black leather cover, lock. Emily remembered the key from childhood. It had always hung on a chain around her mother's neck, even in the hospital. She opened it. The last entry was dated 2 days before her death. Kyle came today. Asked me to sign papers. Says the house is his dream. I don't believe him. He never dreamed of a house. He dreamed of money. But Emily, she's burned out. I see it in her eyes. Maybe if he gets the house, he'll become better? God, forgive me. I don't want her to suffer again. Emily closed the journal. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. This wasn't revenge. It was protection. Her mother had been trying to shield her from her brother, from pain, from disappointment. But she'd shielded her the wrong way. Now Emily would fix it. Emily filed a lawsuit to invalidate the will. Grounds: her mother was under psychological duress and didn't understand the consequences of her actions. Attached were medical records, nurse testimonies, recorded conversations. Yes, she'd placed a voice recorder in the living room a week before her mother died, just in case, and excerpts from the journal. Kyle showed up at her apartment 2 days later. Unannounced. He barged in as if the place still belonged to the family. "Have you lost your mind?" he shouted. "You're going to ruin everything." "Me?" she asked calmly. "You ruined it the moment you signed those papers without telling me. Mom decided herself. Mom was dying. And you took advantage of that." He grabbed her by the shoulders. She didn't flinch. "Take your hands off me, or I call the police. And trust me, they already know you've threatened me before." He let go, glared at her with hate, and left. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. Emily didn't waste a moment. She found a buyer for the house, not a developer, but a family who wanted to keep it intact. Their offer was $20,000 less, but with a notarized agreement. If the house went to Emily, she'd sell it to them. They agreed. She also contacted the IRS. It turned out Kyle hadn't paid child support for 18 months. Michelle filed a claim, and now he risked not just the house, but his driver's license too. In court, things didn't go as he'd expected. The judge was stern. The medical reports were clear-cut. And her mother's journal made an impression, even on Kyle's lawyer. "Your Honor," Emily said, rising to her feet, "I don't want the house for myself. I want it to fund my niece's education. So at least one generation in our family doesn't repeat his mistakes." The judge nodded. The verdict came the same day. The will was declared invalid. Assets to be split equally between the children 50-50ths. But with a clause: if Kyle didn't settle his child support arrears within 30 days, his share would transfer entirely to Emily. He didn't pay. He couldn't. The deposit money was already gone. Emily didn't sell the house. Not right away. She renovated the kitchen, replaced the roof, painted the walls a soft beige, just how her mother liked it. Then she invited Michelle and Emma over. "This is your home now," she told the little girl. "When you're grown, it'll be yours. Until then, come every holiday. You'll always be welcome here." Emma hugged her tightly, as if sensing this aunt was the only one who'd stayed. A month later, a letter arrived from Kyle. No return address. Just one line. "You won. But I'll never forgive you." Emily burned it. Calmly. Just like she'd once burned all her father's photos. A year passed. The house stood. Emma visited every weekend. Michelle found a job in Portland. And Emily, she started dreaming again. Not of revenge, but of the future. Because revenge isn't about destroying someone's life. It's about building yours so well that your enemy realizes they were never in control. And never will be. He took everything, but she took the future. And that was worth more than any house.